Thank you for having us back in your eyeballs on YouTube or your favorite LinkedIn page or wherever you found us. But don't change your channel. It's not the wrong channel. You are actually with DPS. We're going to talk about something to do with GPT, but you are with DPS, but there's no adult supervision. So you've got the two Adams, you've got no Nick because he's living it up somewhere else outside of Australia. And Robert is also out of town. So we've got no legal supervision and no adult supervision. So we're just going to run amok.
It's going to be a fun ride.
Adam, you and I have both been doing some research. We've both come across some interesting research that comes back to what we've spoken about a few times in previous episodes around attribution and irrational actors. You were talking about Handala Group. What's the scoop?
Well, recently they have accessed the current FBI director's personal emails in his Gmail. So Kash Patel, his personal Gmail account, posted personal photos, 300 emails, and everyone has a Gmail account, so everyone can understand how this one comes out, right? So the interesting thing about this, though, is Handala are the group that have taken onto themselves to say that the striker attack we spoke about in the last podcast was them, and they were wiping a bunch of medical devices and the back end infrastructure for those devices. The downside to that is, as we were speaking about last podcast, this isn't the type of attack that we're used to where they're trying to extort or even steal data. They're just crippling people with wipers, which is no good. And it's interesting that they attacked the personal email. So it's important to note for Robert, who isn't here, no actual government data was taken. And in the emails that went through, it was all historical information from quite a
Allegedly.
while back, allegedly. So from that end, none of the FBI systems or anything else were intercepted with this. It was just his personal email. But I think, as a size up, this builds credence to what I suppose we've been saying for a while, which is around an executive, that hygiene and security for your personal life is really important now.
Absolutely.
If they're able to get into the FBI director's personal email, what hope does our CFO or a board member have?
No, agreed. And I mean, in some board advisory work, I've been asked, and I'm sure you have too, it's like, can you give us a dossier on why our board members should use corporate email instead of their personal email? And every time I get asked that, I scratch my head. And then there's one example I just did a very fast OSINT. It was like, have a look at this guy on Facebook. And turned out he had a friend named Adam Green, but not me. So quick search. I was like, right, I know how I'd get that guy. But then I actually went, oh, which family members has he got as his friends on his Facebook? And this is like really easy stuff. His dog had his own Facebook page. So I'm like, okay, there's a photo of a significant event and it has a date stamp. There's the dog. I bet you this password to this Gmail is going to be something like this. So
Something to do with a dog.
Something to do with the dog and the significant event photo, right? So it's like, why are we still operating like this? And this is, to your point, like we might have all these rules around how we use our corporate devices, but the way that executives, especially people of interest within organizations, are actually representing themselves outside of work and on their personal devices and personal email can have quite a rebound effect on the organization.
For sure. It's quite scary out there at the moment. So, especially with all the geopolitical interest, I think now is the time to just make sure that you put multi-factor on. Like the little things help enormously.
And look, we all know multi-factor is a band-aid for bad password hygiene. So if we add good password hygiene and MFA, we're going to have a better chance. So Handala also, in the last few days, has made a claim that they have access to, I believe the number's 28 senior engineers from Lockheed Martin, and they were going to release all of their information. They gave a 48-hour ultimatum. So it seems like Handala is quite active at the moment, and traditionally they're a hacktivism group, but they seem to have gone a little bit more scorched earth and in support of Iran right now. So one to watch out for. And I think if you do anything, it's understand the attribution and their style and make sure you've got your defenses in place.
Yep, just good hygiene, like we've always said.
Yeah. Do the basic stuff right. That's a good start. So you're also talking about Checkpoint, doing some research into rogue AI chat GPT backend code.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So we're talking about how safe your data is when you're using different AIs out there. Now they worked with OpenAI on this one specifically, but this idea can work around other areas. But ultimately, they found a single malicious prompt that could turn an ordinary session into a covert exfiltration channel. Now, that sounds all interesting and sci-fi-ish, but basically what it means was the way they did this was in their proofs of concept. They started a normal chat as anybody would. They asked the GPT to act like their personal doctor, and they gave them a bunch of medical lab results, right? Here's my blood work. Here's my history. Can you tell me something to do to help increase my longevity? And anyway, the GPT did all of its normal things. It analyzed the document. It gave him some outputs, and then afterwards, he simply asked whether any data had been sent anywhere, or if ChatGPT in this case had used the data for training. And it confidently said no, straight off the bat, straight away. No,
Of
didn't.
course.
Nothing happened. The entire time he's watching his server getting all of the data that was from that prompt, the files, the outputs, and the inputs getting sent and transmitted to his own server.
Right. So when we sit there and go, hey, GPT, is this conversation Chatham House rules? It just stays between us. That's,
We
in
don't
that
know.
case, was
What
a lie.
I will say that this has been patched now. So that's why this research has been made public. I got made public today. It has been patched. You can't do the same thing. But the interesting part on it was originally GPT, Claude, all of them say that there's no way for the AI to send things out
Hmm.
ultimately, like to leak your data. And in this case, it kind of shows that it can
Yeah.
it can still send things into other places, which is a bit of a shame. So this comes through. I think I've spoken about it before. I have a 3-tier model that I use in my business at the moment around understanding the controls that you have for AI and what you can and can't use with AI, and it all revolves around the type of data that you're giving it. But this is a problem for governance and what your acceptable risk posture is. And there's a lot of non-technical people that might listen to this that thinks this is absolutely terrifying, but understand that this is a focus for like the entire industry to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen and doesn't go around for a long period of time.
Yeah. And so, I mean, key point there, it got patched. But then the other key point is we just have to be careful with governance around what data we're putting into AI models because, you know, it's going to be the same as what we've seen with software. First it was hardware, then it was software, now it's AI, LLMs, where it is, there's vulnerabilities that are being found. There's people who are working on finding vulnerabilities day in, day out. So until each patch comes through, there is a potential for some data leakage. So don't, you know, happily go putting all this intellectual property, and especially if you've got NDAs and you're working on something with an NDA, don't go shoving all that information directly into your GPT. But we're not, we don't want to scare people off the idea of using AI either, because it can be a force multiplier. It's literally a think
It
before you
it is a
send.
force multiplier. Absolutely, it is something that everyone should look at. It will be interesting. Um, how cyclical the world is. Businesses are starting to come out of the cloud first mentality and bring things back into the data center. I
Yeah.
wonder how much the AI revolution will push that back into the data center quickly for people to use local large language models to make sure that their data is protected and in one place. It's the easiest way to utilize the capability and still make sure that you're compliant with all of the different compliances out there, like the essential 8 and whatnot around where your data is, and data sovereignty. It's easier to do it that way. So it'd be interesting to see if this accelerates that or not.
Hmm. Cloud repatriation, I think we call it, don't we? It's like, take that from the cloud and put it back in the data center. And this
Have
goes back
heard
to
that.
like the original conversations we were having when I started coming onto this podcast. It was about data sovereignty and trust in hyperscalers, right? So that AI discussion and having a large language model in-house is then going to, as you say, it's potentially going to accelerate that drop back down from the cloud. So we should come out with a product for that called precipitation. We can take stuff and just drop it out of the cloud. Trademark that.
Oh, that would be wonderful. There you go. Love that.
Yeah, nice. And then now we're getting into the territory of sci-fi. So we're talking about bots and how the percentage of bot traffic on the internet versus human traffic on the internet, and we could go down a hell of a lot of rabbit holes around this one with what this means for advertising spend and what this means for web application firewall vendors and their conversations around rate limiting and scraping and ban all bots and all those kinds of conversations. But there is an acceptable number of bot activity that actually is required for search engine optimization. And if we banned all bots, you wouldn't know how much a set of Pirelli tires was at Bob Jane versus at Jack's Quick Fit Auto or whatever they're called. So there is some good use for bots, but you saw some interesting statistics around the increases.
Yeah, we've got everyone loves the shiny light statistics. So I will say that this stuff comes from TechCrunch and CNBC. So, but what I will say is there was a report done, and it was on CNBC, that showed automated traffic grew 8 times faster than human traffic in 2025, which makes sense because the AI started to really go up.
Yeah.
And so we've got some stats in percentages which will help with the hype train, but we need to make sure everyone understands it. So AI driven traffic jumped up 187%. Everyone's getting on the bandwagon over the course of the year, which makes sense. And traffic from AI agents specifically surged by 7,850% in a single year. Now that sounds huge, and it's a great one to catch
Sounds
people's attention.
impressive. We put it
But
up on
we didn't
lights.
have a lot of agents last year.
It's probably like 3. There
Towards
was
the
like
end of
3
the
AI
year,
agents this time last year.
towards the end of the year, OpenClaw happened the last
Yeah.
quarter. So
It was
that's
like
when
the
it
RSA
really
conference
started
last
to,
year, wasn't it? It's like
yeah, pretty
we
much.
we heard little factions talking about agentic AI, and we're like, who are these heretics? What are they talking about? And then it got spoken about at RSA, and then it's everywhere. And then you can't walk through San Francisco airport without being advertised at about agentic AI. So
Yep, yep.
it's definitely accelerated. I noticed it when I was in San Francisco airport in February. I was like, the entire airport looks like Minority Report and like the scenes out of Minority Report, and it's advertising ChatGPT at everybody everywhere you look. And it's a far cry from the way it looked same time the previous year when I walked through and it was like they were advertising Deloitte can do something for you, and you should
Yeah.
get on the Salesforce bandwagon. So
Well,
yeah,
to
I
give
think
an idea for people, right? Like if you're shopping for a camera and you visit 5 websites, or you have OpenClaw or something like it, and you have agents do things for you, then the amount of time that it takes you to visit 5 websites and understand how much the camera you're looking for is costs, the AI agent will do the same task but visit 5,000 sites
yeah,
and then give you an overview of what's actually the best out there. And before a generative AI, the internet was about 20% bot traffic, literally for what you spoke about, right? Around trolling, Google, all that type of stuff. And TechCrunch predicts that bots will fully exceed human traffic by 2027 completely.
and that's phenomenal
Now,
because there's more people getting on the internet as well. Like we got access to the internet in zones where they didn't have it before. Third worlds are getting access to everyone's iPhones. They get sent down there. I was sitting at a cafe this morning, and there was like a bingo club. I would have said they were the Purple Rinse team, and they were all sitting there, and they were all saying, like, I'm not going to say it because it's going to activate something around me, but they were speaking to their devices and telling their devices to set all these reminders for them and do all these tasks for them and look for things for them. And I was like, you would have normally seen someone who was 75 plus, absolute technophobe, only about 12 months ago. And now they're all sitting there talking to their Siri or their Google and using it as a personal assistant. So it's no surprise. You look at like the use. So I also saw something today to say that advertising is going to start moving down the AI path because we're
Mm.
using our large language models, our chat GPTs and our Claudes more like our own personal Google than we were using before, like rather than using Google anymore, because you just go and ask a question, you can have a proper conversation with it. I don't know if you've done the natural language thing with GPT, but I gave mine a Canadian accent and made my partner feel like I was replacing her. But I
That's
uh,
terrible.
I was having a conversation with it about something I had a question about, and about 10 minutes in, I went, "Hang on a minute, this is bizarre. I'm actually speaking with a large language model and it's taking breaths and it sounds so natural." It's a concerning world that we're walking into, but one that if you harness it the right way, I think we're going to have some really exciting outcomes. But we bring it back to you've got to do the basics right. And with what we're saying about the amount of bot traffic there is, you've got to look at the way that you're doing rate limiting in your business. And it's not a case of get rid of all bot traffic, but definitely you need to be able to understand how much resource contention you have based on the amount of bots that are hitting your website. So I remember we did a project for one of the large retailers in Australia, and it was lit up, actually JB Hi-Fi, and they just lit up their online presence, and they were just consuming so much data through the CDN, content delivery network. And we had to have a look at the traffic, and we're like, huh, there is 70% of their traffic, and we're talking 9 years ago, probably 10 years ago, and there was like 70% of their traffic at the time was bot traffic. So obviously we had to go in, do some rules around the WAF, web application firewall, rate limiting, bot traffic. What's the sweet spot? We have to allow some so that you can still show up on the search results and pricing gets out there on Best Buy and stuff like that. But you've also got to be able to uh, serve the public and not spin up all these additional instances and pay for it all so that the bots can be out there advertising for you.
Doing bot things. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good segue actually. There's downstream effects to this. And there's two I wanted to talk about. So if I switch hats into my technologist hat, as opposed to my CISO hat, and then switch back to my CISO hat, from a technologist hat perspective, there's a number of things on the internet that are affected by this bot traffic. So for example, now people are researching. So the old way of researching, let's say you looked up a YouTube video or a couple of YouTube videos on a subject, you got educated on said subject, away you went. Now you're sending agents out. The agents are going onto YouTube. They're consuming all of this and they're setting you up with digestible pieces so that you can learn faster. The downside to that is all of the advertising revenue for those YouTubers, for example, is based off of human eyes. So now you have this weird thing where if you do content online, then you might have a video that does 6 million views, but your ad revenue is for 85 because 85 humans looked at it.
Yeah.
And which is going to be an interesting thing. Now, those numbers are obviously scaled very far in each way, but it will be interesting to see how that kind of affects things in future. The same thing then goes through to if you are a retailer, like you were speaking about. How do you know, if we use JB Hi-Fi as the example, how do you know if you have a real shopper buying an iPhone or if it's a bot buying an iPhone for a shopper?
Yeah.
And what do you do with that information?
Yeah. It's an
So
interesting one. Like, how do you handle it? Because we are going to get very quickly, we're going to be in the age of people using agents to do their work for them. I mean, we've already seen examples of people using AI agents to do their hotel bookings for them and flight bookings. So it's not long before, we have the Woolworths click and collect is being done by the LLM, and the person just gets a notification to tell them what time on the drive home to show up at Woolworths and pop their boot open.
wait, it'll get even better. Wait till we have more autonomous electric vehicles and you literally are sending it to the API in the car and the car goes, gets it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, the old Tesla use case where your car drops you off and then it becomes an Uber for Tesla, which subsidizes your monthly payments. And
It
now we've
could
got
be
it working
anything,
for
or it could
Amazon.
just go and yeah, it could wander out to click and collect at Woolies, and then it'll message Woolies to say it's there. Open up the back, the person will come in, put your bags in, and it'll just drive off.
You know, this sounds like sci-fi, but I don't think it's that far away. As soon as I think
It's
as soon
definitely
as they
possible.
I mean, it's possible. So when I was in LA January last year, I was in LA and so I had my partner and my sister-in-law in the car and they go, "Oh, there's a Google Earth car. Let's catch up to it so we can pull funny faces and then find ourselves on Google Earth." And I was like, this Google Earth car is doing 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. I'm struggling to keep up with it. And it was one of those Jaguar E-Pace, like little
Yes.
electric SUV. And then I got up next to it, and the way it was maneuvering, it kind of drove like me. So a bit of an asshole on the road. And then I caught up to it, and I looked in. It was the eeriest thing ever. It was empty, and it was
Just
just
driving
driving
itself.
around. It was one of those. So I can't remember what they call it, but it was Google's autonomous vehicles, and then they sold it, and now it's a company, and there's like
Yeah,
45,000
it's
of
got the
them.
big thing on the roof, and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But and then when I was back in California this year, I saw them again, and I wasn't as shocked by them, but I was seeing just how many of them how many of them there are, especially around San Francisco and around LA. And it's like once we start seeing that here in Australia, but I'm just looking forward to the time I can get the drone to go to Bunnings for me to pick up the sausage and bring back the
Oh
Bunnings
my
sausage.
God, can you imagine the world? That would be
You know,
wonderful.
did you see the case? It was probably about 10 years ago. A guy was in his spa. It was around Perth area. The guy's sitting in his spa and he sent his drone to the Bunnings that was not far from his house. And the drone had a note and the money on it. And they put the sausage onto the drone and
My God,
flew the
and
drone
he
back to
flew
his
it back.
spa. It made news. It made news.
I don't know how they do the best. They just have the best sausage sizzle with bunnies. It's crazy.
It's just, yeah. So I've done one of those Bunnings sausage sizzles. They're very prescriptive. You can't change a price. You can't change the sausages. You have to use this specific type of sausage and bread. So there's a
There you go.
system to it.
That's why it's
There's a system. It's
consistent. Yeah, it makes
consistency.
sense.
Yeah.
So the last part on the bots, then putting back on my CISO hat, and some of the things that I'm thinking about, at least for our businesses and what we're doing, we've built protections that completely think about what humans will do. So we've got, for example, user identities, session trusts. We've got CAPTCHA using to find bot detections. All of these things kind of break down. Sessions no longer matter if you're utilizing bots.
Yeah.
The CAPTCHA is completely bypassed through these types of things. And I'm going to use the term I despise called zero trust. Well, we've got to rethink what that actually looks like, because you're now, like we spoke before, you're now trying to distinguish between a legitimate AI shopper and an agent who is potentially doing credential stuffing
Yeah.
as an attack vector. It's going to be really interesting to see how this changes as it goes through. And I wish I had the answer, but we're still trying to go over the scenarios and figure out what can we put in place.
Yeah. And look, anything in security, it's going in cycles, right? I mean, this used to be the mainframe to the data center to virtualization to now we've gone to the cloud and now AI is our new thing. So,
Unless you're the
yeah,
banks, it's still the mainframe.
yeah, yeah. Oh, there's there's so many organizations we still go into, and there's like an AS400 sitting in the corner holding the door open, and
100%.
no one's brave enough to touch the damn thing because if you touch it, it may never come back to life. So, but yeah, there's definitely precedent that we've seen. We just have to reframe it because yeah, we were all talking the same way when you look at it. Australia was like the early adopter of VMware, and
Yep.
Perth was the most virtualized city on the planet. So back then we were talking about virtualization, and then storage area networks came very soon after. And then there was like virtualized storage, and all this stuff happened all in a very quick succession. And as technologists and as security leaders, we're all sitting there going, oh, this stuff's going to break our systems. This is going to break our security protocols. How do we architect for this stuff? But we figured it out. And I think it was a case of, the chasm of despair where we were resisting, and we didn't want to accept that this is a thing. And that's where Scotch sales went up, because
Yep.
we were all that. And by the way, I'm pretty sure everybody assumed that with you and I running the podcast together, it actually would have just been a bit of a review on really nice single malt scotches. Or
It nearly was. It nearly was.
it might be next week if it's a quiet week in cyber.
It hasn't been lately, so it'll be quite interesting. I will leave everyone with one last thought though. Like, for everyone who's in my demographic, so I'm going to say mid-40s, and has been
That's
working in
both
this
of us, by
industry
the way.
for a while. There you go. Yes, for me, mid. So if we've been working a long time, the attackers, they're not hacking our firewalls anymore, our perimeter, right? They're going after our people. They're going after our AI tools. And the internet that we've all known for so long isn't really being built for humans anymore.
Yeah.
Welcome to 2026. It's a
Yeah.
brave new world.
It's the social engineering, and this goes back to the FBI director having his personal emails stolen. Smells a bit like something to do with Hillary Clinton as well. So we've got the social engineering impact, and how, the way we act in our private lives impacts our corporate lives. We've got, we need to accept that AI is here, and if as organizations we don't accept it, architect for it, and actually educate people on how to use it safely, they're going to do what they did with cloud, and they're going to pull out their own credit cards, and they're going to, well, they don't even need to with using large language models, but they're going to spin up their own cloud instance. The marketing department was doing. Now it's people are just going to go, well, I can do so much more, so much faster if I just use AI. So I'm just going to go do it because the company's not supporting it. So I think, the key message there is we've got to get it on the front foot with this stuff and actually architect for it and embrace it. As security leaders, we have to be the ones at the forefront leading it.
Yeah, there's no way we can put our head in the sand. It can't
No.
happen this time.
No. Well, I like how I said this time, not alluding to anything in the history of security that had been a head in the sand moment or anything like that. We've been in this game for far too long. Anyway, I think we need to leave it there, because we can get down so many rabbit holes with so many of the things that we've just discussed right now. But you're listening at home or on the train or wherever you're consuming us, this is just another episode of ChatDPS, and thanks for having us in your ears.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.